All right, gentlemen, check it out. You're about to listen to the last audio-only episode ever of the Mountaintop Podcast. That's right. Starting next week, for next Thursday's full episode, every weekly full episode will also have a video version. You can check out the video version for every podcast going forward after this week at mountaintoppodcast.com/YouTube. I'll have them all in a separate playlist for you. You'll be able to get the audio and the video versions on YouTube. And of course, if you want to stick with the audio version, you can keep getting that from Spotify or iHeart or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from. Fair warning, these episodes are going to be kind of raw in the audio version, but I weirdly think it's an improvement. Also, based on the several we have in the can already, they're funnier. We're just having a whole lot more laughs, I guess, when we can see each other. Anyway, I know you guys have been asking for this for a long time, and we're going to make it happen, Captain. But for now, enjoy this episode with my new friend, G. Scott Graham, called Co-Piloting with Women.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
All right, how's it going, gentlemen? You are tuned in to another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scott McKay from X and Y Communications. You can find me on X, on True Social, on TikTok, and on YouTube at Scott McKay, and on Threads and Instagram at Real Scott McKay. As always, the website is mountaintoppodcast.com. And gentlemen, once again, as I say every episode, if you're not on our Facebook group already, make sure you go join it. That's at the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. With me today is a new friend of mine. He's a good dude with a really excellent topic that I can't wait to just crush with a big heavy hammer with this guy. He is coming to us from New England. He's sometimes in Boston, sometimes at his farm in Vermont, which sounds like a pretty nice lifestyle. And he is a polymath of sorts. He calls himself an existential handyman. But today we're going to talk specifically about one of the many books he has authored called Cleared for Love, The Co-Pilot's Guide to Lasting Relationships. His name is Scott Graham. And we are indeed going to talk about co-piloting relationships with women. Welcome, Scott. Glad to have you.
It is good to be here, Scott. Nice name.
Yeah, man. Scott is a good name, especially if you're of Scottish lineage. And let's see, your last name is Graham, which is English, isn't it?
It heads more towards Scottish. I did not know that. I actually, my family thought it was Irish for so many years, but I think it's just because they like drinking. All the guys like drinking on St. Patrick's Day. And so I found out after I met actually a person from Scotland and we became good friends. And she said, Graham really is a Scottish name. And I've been to a couple Highlander events and found the Graham family crest from Scotland.
Well, how about that? I guess because I've always heard Graham as a first name, kind of like with Nigel and Colin, it's up there, right? As purely English first names you don't ever hear anywhere else. Like, I don't know a whole lot of Nigels who are Americans. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, Graham seems to be one of those names, which is why I guess to my own shame as a Scotsman of Clan Mackay, actually. So it's actually pronounced, but that's awkward. So Mackay it is in America. Blame it on Ellis Island, right?
Right.
I thought that Graham was an English name, but now that I'm thinking back on everything I've ever seen in terms of tartans and clans, it seems like I may have seen the clan Graham somewhere in there. So that's pretty cool. And by the way, I don't think you should ever sell the Scots or the British or the English short in terms of their affinity for alcohol and how much of it they're able to consume. I think the British Isles is pretty
true.
much. Yeah. But enough about us. Let's go ahead and talk about your book, Cleared for Love, which is a pretty new book. By the time this is published, this podcast, it will be pretty new on Amazon. Tell us what inspired the book.
I had been in a relationship for 31 years and my spouse died, and I entered a new relationship, and one of the things that kind of became the forefront, after you've been through a relationship for 31 years, you really kind of have the skills together that you didn't have when you first started. So in this new relationship, I initiated a conversation of, what do we need to do to communicate? And based on my 31 years of experience, this is my opinion of what I think we need to do. And we started talking about how we communicate and how we build a relationship with each other. At the same time, when we were talking about these communication skills, I got asked this really pointed question, like, what kind of partner are you looking for? And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, I'm looking for a co-pilot. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And from that conversation of co-pilot and communication came this book of how you can build a solid relationship by reflecting on that metaphor of what a good co-pilot does.
So talk to me about how you're relating the term co-pilot to relationships in particular. What does that even mean?
Well, think about it. If you're flying a plane and you're in the cockpit, you want a co-pilot that is going to be seated right next to you. You don't want a co-pilot that is going to get up and, head out and talk to the passengers while you're flying the plane. You want a co-pilot that's right there and present with you. You also, as a pilot and co-pilot, you want to be talking about things before they come up. Like, there's turbulence ahead. That's kind of a core thing about collaboration. So co-pilot turns to the pilot, or the pilot turns to the co-pilot. You're both there and says, there's turbulence up ahead. What do we want to do about it? Are we going to gain elevation? Are we going to descend? Are we going to go, try to fly around it? What are we going to do? And then you both decide together what you're going to do.
Now, I sense you're an aviation guy.
I am kind of an aviation guy. I have a FAA drone license, which I'm pretty proud of, and I really am into planes. But I'm also into good relationships too, because there is nothing worse than a relationship that's gone south. You spend all this time really just trying to salvage something that you should have been working on and building from the very beginning.
And kind of carrying that analogy forward a bit, smooth flights are wonderful. Turbulent flights suck. And the last thing you want to do is crash and burn.
Absolutely. And actually, the last thing you want to do is have all kinds of problems because your co-pilot's not communicating to you. Or you're the co-pilot and you forgot to tell the captain that this engine light came on, or this issue came on, or that issue. There's a reason there's two co-pilots and a third, a navigator on a plane together. There's a lot of stuff to manage. And there's a lot of stuff to manage in a relationship. We just take it for granted, especially once we've gotten past the initial dating, the meet and greet, especially for a lot of folks once we got married. Most people, unfortunately, put more energy into maintaining their car, washing and waxing their pickup truck, than they do into the relationships with their girlfriends. Unfortunately.
That's very true. And I've talked about that before. We go to college for 4, 8, 10 years to make sure we're ready for our career. We'll take all kinds of training courses to be better at what we love to do. We'll go out to the driving range and hit a couple baskets of golf balls. And then when it comes to being attractive to women or making a relationship with one work, we wing it, to kind of carry forward your flying analogy just a little bit more, right? But winging it in this context isn't such a good thing.
Absolutely. And it's in another conversation we had early on. I said, you know what? I got to be clear with you. We are never, ever, ever going to go to couples counseling. We're not going to have to go to couples counseling because we are never, ever, ever. As the man in this relationship, taking responsibility for myself and my emotions, am going to be working hard enough so that we never, ever have to go to couples counseling.
Well, that's an interesting take because I think a lot of guys listening would assume that's the woman who creates the troubles that made this necessary, this counseling. So if you're getting into a relationship and you're thinking, okay, well, I can lead as a man in this relationship in a way that's going to obviate the need for her to ever need counseling. I'm not sure how you're arriving at that because, I mean, women can come up with all kinds of crazy cockamamie stuff once you get to know them that you didn't think was there. And it can start to feel like, hey, you know what? I don't think we've got this together by ourselves. We may need someone to at least mediate this. So what's your secret sauce for, I don't know, I guess what you're talking about in part has got to include some sort of vetting of a potential partner before you even get into the relationship, taking the time to see if you're on each other's wavelength. What I talk about is getting each other, and possibly something more such that you can make such a bold pronouncement that we are never going to need counseling. So what's your process for that?
Well, there's a couple of pieces, and you're right. There has to be a vetting. And so in this relationship, I'd already done the vetting. I mean, it wasn't my first time at bat. I've been through a number of folks. So I knew this person had the qualities that would mean that we wouldn't have to go to counseling. There was a commitment to working things out, a commitment to being a good co-pilot. So, I mean, think about it this way. Yes, a woman's going to bring God knows what. A guy's going to bring God knows what into the relationship that you might not know about. That's just superficial stuff. If you have good co-piloting skills, you're going to hit storms, rain, snow, heat, all kinds of things that are going to happen while you're piloting this plane together. And you can't predict those pieces, but you can prepare for those pieces. So there is a vetting, right? You don't want to have the person whose only skill set is to back up and raise the jetway to connect with the plane once it lands as your co-pilot. You do have to have some sort of you have to have co-piloting skills, but you also have to have a commitment to staying in the seat. Staying in the seat's really important.
Yeah, and once that cockpit door is locked, according to FAA rules, nobody else is going to go in there.
Exactly. In my last relationship, Scott, one of the things that we did that we may, and this is something, gentlemen, if you're listening to this takes a lot of courage. I said in our conversation, we committed in our conversation that we were going to throw the parachutes away. And that meant we were going to stick in there forever. If a person lost their legs, if they went to jail, if they got, whatever happened, we were in there. If there was crappy co-piloting, we would still be in there together. Now, that doesn't mean committing to suffering, gentlemen. What it means is committing to not letting things get that bad. It's the same thing I said about not going to therapy, right? We're not going to have to go to therapy because I'm going to make sure that I do my part, that things don't get that bad. And I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to stay in this relationship, even if it gets horrible. And with that realization and that commitment, I'm going to make sure, damn straight, that things don't get that bad.
Well, there's got to be a lot of pre-flight planning, a lot of 2020 foresight. Just like you're talking about.
Absolutely. And we don't do that in relationships.
We wing it.
We wing it. You said it earlier, Scott. We do all this. We go to college for 4 years, and then we get in a relationship, and we just ignore it. We spend more time fixing up our house and thinking about our house than we do about our relationship.
Well, a lot of women think more about the marriage ceremony than the actual marriage.
Exactly right.
It's a disaster. It's not a disaster waiting to happen. It's already a disaster before it happens.
Right. And so, gentlemen, you are setting the tone for the relationship that you are going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, way back when it comes to planning for the wedding.
So with that said, let's go ahead and do some housekeeping regarding the semantics of the actual title of your book. Cleared for Love, The Co-Pilot's Guide to Lasting Relationships. If the book is for fellow men, that would imply we are the co-pilot. and that the woman might be the captain. But I think you're probably simply using the term co-pilot in that context, the context of the title of your book, that is, to indicate what the book's about. So really, hierarchically, are you advocating that the man be man of the house and the woman be co-pilot, or that you're both kind of co-piloting this plane together with no specific leadership hierarchy?
It's the second one, Scott, and
Okay.
and I'm glad you brought that up because I'm talking to men on this podcast, and so when I say to the guys that are listening to this that it is your responsibility to make sure that your relationship is stable and that plane is flying steady, I would say the same thing if I was on a podcast that was only being listened to by women. I would say to the women listening to the podcast, this is your responsibility to make sure that that plane flies steady and is succeeding to get to the destination that you want to get it to.
Well, that's interesting because we do talk a lot about masculine leadership on this show. And the analogy that I would give to co-piloting would be when you get in a car and go out on a date. I've seen women who, have a very strong feminine nature hand the keys to their own car, if that's the only car available, to the guy and say, you drive. And the guy will say, but it's your car. She goes, no, you're the man, you drive. And typically when we go on vacation, even in our household here, I do most of the driving. And that's the way my wife wants it. She wants me to be the one who's in control, with the assumption, and it, is a safe assumption around here, at least, it may not be in other relationships, that the man is going to have the best interests of wife and descending from that, children, pets, everybody in the household in mind as he's piloting. But in reality, when it comes to emotions, decisions, respect, etc., the popular viewpoint nowadays is male and female, man and woman, whether you're gay or straight, actually. There should be parity in terms of who's actually in charge. Otherwise, the man may be branded toxic or a controlling jerk or something like that. But as good as that sounds, I think women are always going to count on a man to be the man of the house. And you've said it yourself a couple times so far in this podcast. But that doesn't mean we're lording it over her. We're actually together side by side. So wrap all this up with a bow. And I think there's a reason why the co-pilot sits side by side. It's not like she's following me around or I'm following her around. We're joined at the hip. We're together in this thing side by side as co-equals with masculine and feminine roles, respecting each other, our viewpoints, our respective knowledge, our decision-making powers, et cetera, although ultimately, in terms of a man being the leader, he is going to be the one who acts when the chips are down. Follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely. When you say parity, Scott, what I really heard was there needs to be an agreement on who's doing what when, on what roles people are having. When you say that you get in the car and you're driving the car and away you go, there's an agreement that you have worked out with your wife, probably not with the dogs, probably not with your kids, but at least with your wife, you worked out an agreement on how things are going to go when you're going someplace and you're traveling.
Definitely not the dogs. They would be strict mistresses.
Right. And so the important piece is to have a conversation so that you are both in agreement of what those roles are. And that's the collaboration piece. If you come in, I talk about a number of different types of communication styles with a co-pilot. And so we got collaboration, we have negotiation, we have kind of drawing a line in the sand where we say, if you pass this, then this is going to happen. And then we have, this really nice French term, which I always butcher, fait accompli. Did I say that in French enough? I don't know.
I'll say good to me, man.
I'll say it the American way because I'm American. Fait accompli. That is where you just do what you're going to do anyway, and it's a done deal. You don't ask, you don't tell, you just do. And then it's like, oh yeah, look what I bought. Look what I did. I made the decision and didn't involve you. And so you work backward from there, right? I made the decision and didn't involve you. Not good at all. Moving one step towards better is, and I mean just a little step towards better is, if you do this, then I'm going to do that, right? It's this kind of threat. You've put a line in the sand. It's the ultimatum, right? I'm not tolerating this anymore. This is how I need it to be. And then negotiation moves it in even better direction, but that's where most people stop. It's collaboration that is best. And the difference between collaboration and negotiation is profound. You're not arguing from a point when you're collaborating. You don't even have a decision in mind. And so, guys, let me tell you this. If you come up to somebody, let's say you're arguing about, well, Scott, give me a topic that you think most couples argue about.
Money.
Okay. So you're arguing about money with your wife, and she wants to spend a certain amount of money on, I don't know, gardening equipment. And you think that's not going to work out in the budget. And you have another position on what you think, like you shouldn't buy the gardening equipment because we want to go on this trip. You are negotiating. You already have an end result in mind. Collaboration is, hey, we have a certain amount of money. Where do you think we should do with it? What are your goals? Should we have money set for retirement? What should we do? I have a couple that I'm working with right now, and they're going through this collaboration negotiation stuff with each other. She just told me last week, I was talking to the wife, their relationship has never been better. And I asked her, I says, what's going on? What do you think that is? And she said, I think it's because we're talking about things at a much more baser level. Like we haven't made up our minds and we're trying to convince the other person. We're really listening and being present about what's going on and then trying to figure it out together. So we wrapped up our call. At the end of the call, I said to her, I have a homework assignment for you if you're up for it. She was up for it. I said, without telling your husband what you just told me, I want you just to go up to him this week and say, hey, things seem a little bit better between us. What do you think? Do you think? And he's probably going to say yes because she's confirmed that it is. And then I said to her, ask him why he thinks that is, and then just listen. I said, your assignment is not, this was really important. I said, your assignment is not to go and then say, well, this is what I think. This is not that communication. This is, you want to see if what comes out of his mouth matches your theory, to see if you really are at that level of basic communication in identifying the turbulence in your relationship. So we'll see how she does.
Yeah, we'll see. I found myself listening very intently to that storyline because it sounds so familiar, even in my own practice. Everything you're talking about, the communication, the collaboration, has got to be built on trust. And the trust has to be based on us being in this together, having vetted each other, chosen each other, and I understand what's going on in your head. I understand your values, and I agree with them, and I'm like-minded. And then if you think of fear and love as opposites, and I know you come from a Buddhist background, at least to some degree, so you're probably going to be tracking with me on that. Mm-hmm. That premise is more common in Eastern religious process than it is in Judeo-Christian ones. Although I don't believe, for the record, that it's in any way, shape, or form inconsistent with Judeo-Christian belief and practice. I think it just rings true to me that the opposite of love is fear. So therefore, the less you fear your spouse, your co-pilot, the more you love them. And going along with that lack of fear is trust, because, of course, lack of trust, doubt, suspicion is a fear-based energy. So this vetting process absolutely positively involves you meeting someone and relating to someone and connecting with someone because you're like-minded. You get each other, which is the way I talk about it. Unfortunately, nowadays, a lot of people in our postmodern era have fallen into the trap of seeing relationships as transactional. In other words, what do I get from this? And, what is this other person going to want from this? And are we going to be able to negotiate a happy medium so no one gets taken and no one has to give too much? But when you're coming from that transactional perspective with regard to relationships, well, what ends up happening is you don't get that connection and you don't get a co-pilot. You get an adversary. Now, if you have two guys at the front of an aircraft fighting over who's going to get to land the thing, and all right, you get to take off this time, I get to land it next time, that's not a collaboration, that's a competition, and you damn Skippy don't want your two pilots up there fighting about it. So the relationship, and of course this is the allegory you're promoting, and I'm obviously agreeing with you. The relationship is flying this airplane of life together and being in collaboration as you do it, which involves the trust. Therefore, when you're making decisions, it can't be what's in my best interest versus what's in your best interest. It has to be, I love you, so I want what's in your best interest. And the other person feeling the same way, is looking out for your best interest and isn't being all selfish. That's how a good relationship works. And that's how you get to the point where 1 + 1 = 5 or 10 or 50, not just 1 + 1 = 2. But nowadays, I'd love for you to comment on this, Scott. It seems like people have gotten to the point where they're getting into a relationship expecting only to get what they want. There's not even a negotiation process anymore. I'm marrying you so you can make me happy, or you can pay all the bills, or you can be my emotional support husband, or something like that. And how dare this other person have needs? They're there for me, not vice versa. And then we wonder why people break up so much. So I'm not even sure people are asking the right questions up front when they've met someone and they're deciding whether or not to get in a relationship with them. I think we've lost our groundedness. I don't think we know how to taxi down the runway, let alone take off anymore. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think you're right on with that. You are right on. Gentlemen, if you are coming from a perspective of collaboration and your spouse or spouse-to-be is coming from a perspective of ultimatum, it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work.
Well, the ultimatum is coming from a position of weakness and fear anyway. They don't feel like they have the choices, so they're leaving the choice up to you. You tell me what the choice is going to be, stay or leave. Yes or no?
Right. So it's the sense of control. So you both have to be on this collaboration focus. And if you think about this, what a horrific flight, first of all, it would be if your two co-pilots were not communicating together and one wanted to go this way and was, grabbing the yoke and turning it to the left and the other one was turning it to the right, or they weren't trusting each other, or one had to look over the other's shoulders, or, did you put the landing gear down? Well, I don't trust that you put the landing gear down unless I see you put the landing gear down. So put it up again and put it down again so I can see you do. I mean, what a nightmare, right? Or what would happen if you had two co-pilots and one just stepped out and is like, yeah, I'm done. I'm hanging
Whatever
out.
movie that is, it would surely star Leslie Nielsen.
Right.
Oh,
and
man.
if you think about this piece that we're talking about with relationships, it doesn't matter what the perspectives are of the two co-pilots. One could be a hardline, we'll do a little political piece. One could be a hardline Democrat, and the other one could be a hardline Republican. That doesn't matter. One could be Jewish and one could be Christian. That doesn't matter. What matters is an agreement on two things. What kind of flight do we want to have, and where are we going? That's it. What's our destination? What are we working towards? And what kind of flight do we want to have? We're going to have a safe flight. We're going to have a secure flight. We're going to, try to get there and knock off 5 minutes, or we're going to go around this cloud front and that's going to add 20 minutes. Whatever it is, there's an agreement on the destination and the environment on the way to the destination.
Or we could be stunt daredevils at the next air show. As long as we're on the same page in terms of what this flight's going to be like.
Yes. You have to be on the same page. And when things come up, and it's invariably going to come up, you have to be able to identify those things early and respond to them together.
Have you ever met a couple who just loves to argue and you're saying to yourself, what is wrong with these people, until you realize they're perfect for each other? They found each other and this is just how they roll. Have you ever met a couple like that?
My last relationship was like that.
And it's actually kind of fun for them. I know a couple, both of them have got to be on the autism spectrum in the exact same way. Neither one of them understands humor. They think anybody with a sense of humor who cracks jokes is stupid and dumb and should be ridiculed. And they're exactly alike. And I'm sure they'll be married for 65 years happily. It's insane. I know couples who are both narcissists, happily being co-narcissists at the expense of everybody else they know. It's remarkable to me, but they're perfect for each other because, like you just said, and I believe very wisely and eloquently, I think it's a wonderful analogy, they decided what kind of flight they want to have and where they were going. And they're in agreement. You know, you mentioned politics. James Carville is married to a woman named Mary Matalin, Matalin. And they've been happily married for like 40, maybe 50 years. And if you know anything about James Carville, he's a very outspoken Democratic pundit. Meanwhile, his wife was George Herbert Walker Bush's campaign director. I believe it was George Herbert Walker Bush. It may have been George W. Bush, but I think she goes further back than that. And she's deeply Republican. So, I mean, these people can have marriages that go the distance despite political differences. And you also mentioned in passing religious differences. I think it's probably a lot easier and makes a lot more sense if a couple votes the same way and prays to the same God, but it's not necessary, especially in the context you're providing. And I really appreciate that.
You could have, Scott, you could have two Republicans sitting right next to each other on the airplane, and they could fight about the destination. They could fight about the aircraft. They wouldn't trust each other, and you could have a miserable flight.
And that goes for either party.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have the funny thing, you know, I said that my spouse and I, you know, fought a lot. We didn't at the very beginning of our relationship. But see, here's the thing. My spouse was not very assertive. Not very assertive at all. And I kept saying, you got to step up for yourself. You got to speak up. Stop taking people's crap. Well, eventually, they stopped taking other people's crap. And you know who was included in that list of people?
You, buddy.
And you know, I did not get the memo. And we had this, I remember this huge argument that we had. And I mean, it got thrown in my face. You want me to stand up for myself? You want me to stand up for myself? God damn it, I'm standing up for myself. And I remember turning and saying, I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly. What I meant was, I want you to stand up for, I realized what was going on. And so this was humorous. I said, I want you to stand up to everybody else on the planet except me. I want you to kowtow to me. And I want you just to do whatever I say. I mean, and we both laughed and shrugged it off. And then we built up kind of a thick skin around kind of our strong combativeness to each other. And I knew that was just an outgrowth of stepping up to other people. Because it was collaborative, because that was the place that we were negotiating and not negotiating, we had talked about, we had planned, and we accepted. It didn't even faze us when we were arguing about different pieces. It fazed other people. They were like, God, you guys are at each other's throats. And I remember turning to my mom. She's like, why do you guys fight all the time? And I'm like, were we fighting?
Hey, it's not fighting. It's collaborative banter.
Exactly.
And euphemize.
Aggressive.
Well, I love it. This has been a fantastic conversation, and we could go on and on. What I want to do, though, is I want to point these guys to your book. It's pretty new. It's on Amazon. And gentlemen, when you go to mountaintopodcast.com/Amazon, you'll find Scott Graham's book, Cleared for Love, The Co-Pilot's Guide to Lasting Relationships, right there at the top of the Amazon influencer queue at mountaintopodcast.com/Amazon, especially if you're listening to this show within about a week or so of its release. And also, when you go to mountaintopodcast.com/co-pilot, COPILOT, it can look like Copilot without that hyphen, and that probably sounds a little more interesting to guys anyway to cop a lot. But in any case, when they go to that URL, they will be sent to gscottgraham.com. What are they going to find there, Scott?
Oh boy, well, they will find all my books. This co-piloting book is my 29th book. And so they'll find...
You're making me feel like a slacker.
You know, I have to tell you, some of the books I just published like 6 books this spring, and people were like, wow, you've really been pumping them out. And I'm like, well, some of these books I started like 5 years ago, and I'm just finishing them up now. And so it was a cold winter, and I had time on my hands, so I finished them up. And so you'll find those. You'll find links to my social media sites. You'll find information about coaching and working with me if that's a piece that interests you. But mostly you'll find my books and reviews, and you'll even find this podcast listed there.
Well, that warms my heart. Very much the opposite of your winters up there in New England. Hey, has there ever been a mild winter in New England up in your neck of the woods? Let's be honest.
No, we had a really long summer. Like, I think it was 10 years ago, we had the longest summer in New England history. It went from July 1st to July 9th. It was great.
Wow, a record.
It was great. It was record.
Record heat in the 60s.
Exactly.
Very good. Very good. G. Scott Graham, you are an aviation enthusiast, an existential handyman, and an author. And this has been a wonderful conversation, a whole lot of fun. Thank you so much for dropping by. I'm very, very pleased to make your acquaintance, and I hope you'll come back.
I definitely will. Thanks, Scott. It has been a privilege to be here. And gentlemen, be good co-pilots. Vet your co-pilots. Don't get in the pilot seat when there's someone that doesn't even know how to fly a plane. Make sure that you're starting at the same place, and you will be successful in your relationship.
The places I could go in extending this episode just based on that last statement alone. But I'm going to resist that temptation. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, Scott. We're definitely going to have you back, maybe to discuss one of your other 29 books.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Hey, guys, go to mountaintoppodcast.com and visit our sponsors, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, which is just up the street from Scott in the northeastern part of the United States. I'm sure they have similar winters up there, but it doesn't stop them from making great stuff that's really going to make you feel like you leveled up your masculinity. Origin in Maine, Hero Soap, and the Keyport, all wonderfully paired sponsors for this particular show because all three of them level up your masculinity. And when you use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 with any of our sponsors, you'll get an additional 10% off at checkout. And gentlemen, all you have to do is go to mountaintoppodcast.com. All three are linked to from there. Some of you have not talked to on the phone yet. For 25 or 30 minutes, won't cost you a dime. I will give you results in advance. You can talk to me about, I don't know, whatever's going on in your life with the women you're either meeting or not meeting just yet. And or if you have any ideas for the show, any feedback you want to give me about the show, I'm open to that too. I'll put my fire suit on, whatever it takes. You can sign up for that free call with me. It can be over phone or Zoom at mountaintoppodcast.com as well. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.